Okay, good evening everyone. Baruch Shechianu v'kimanu v'yanu l'zman hazeh to the broadcasting from our lovely bungalow in South Fallsburg. And we thank Hashem that we could be all connected here and pick up right where we left off. Irving Fishbaum pointed out correctly that tomorrow you will need your second volume of Art Scroll if you learn with the Art Scroll Gemara. That's right. We've already finished a full volume of Art Scroll, Masechtas Gittin. We are holding now on Daf Mem Vav Amid Beis at the new Mishnah, and we learn with the tefillah, as we have been learning, that children that are waiting to get into yeshiva should get into yeshiva smoothly, with ne'imus, without heartache for the parents. We want to welcome in Mel Zachter, Nachman Chapler, Irving Fishbaum, Felipe Black, Aaron Swade, Baruch Ian, Stephen Holtzman, Saba, Dr. Guy, Gedalia Engel, Yitzi Muller, Ruvain Pollack, Avram Schenkman, Moshe Lehman, Berish Gesseman, Rabbi Kranz, Ilya Shutman, David Helfgott on Kol Aloshin. We are again starting at the new Mishnah. It's the second Mishnah on Memvav Mebeis. Hamoicher es atzmoi ves banav lo'evdei kachavim. Here's a person who, desperate for money, sells himself and his children to idolaters, and then he throws himself upon the community to redeem him, to ransom him. Now the Gemara says if he did this already 3 times, ein poiden oisai, we don't ransom him, because you can't put such a burden on the community. However, aval poiden es abanim la'achar misas avim, once the father dies, then the children we don't leave in the hands of the idolaters, because while the father was alive, he would watch, they shouldn't assimilate. But now the children will assimilate, so therefore we ransom them after the father dies. Amar Ravasi, and Ravasi says normally we would ransom, but this if he sold himself once, twice, and a third time already he developed the chazaka, then we don't ransom him anymore. Hano b'nei Bei Michse, there were people from the town of Bei Michse, the Yosfei Zuzei me'avodas kechavim, they took loans from Goyim, and then, you take loans from loan sharks, v'lo yavalu lemifru inu, they didn't have to pay up, also v'kogarvelu, so the idolaters came and seized them as slaves. Also, they came to Rav Huna, so they came before Rav Huna imploring to be redeemed. Amalahu, he said to them, what could I do for you? If you sell yourself and your children to Avdei Kachavim, and this is tantamount to selling yourself, because if you lend money and you don't have what to pay, they're going to seize you. So Amalei Rabbi Abba wondered, L'madatenu Rabbeinu, this is the respectful way of asking a question, as we welcome in Mo Kushner. L'madatenu Rabbeinu, you taught us, our master, V'hu shemachar b'shana v'shilesh. This is only if he's a 3-timer. Amalei, so Rav Huna explained that that's the case over here. Hani mirgul regile, these people didn't lend from Goyim once. They did it already a bunch of times. Hani mirgul regile da'avdeyachi. Now here, we know that there was a sect called the Ludim. The Ludim were actually, in Talmudic times, a cannibalistic sect. They ate people. They were cannibals. So Ahu Gavra de Zavan Nafshe Luludai, he sold himself to cannibals. Also the Kami de Rabami, he came before Rabami, Amalei Pirkun. He said, please redeem me. Amar, so Rabami reasoned as follows. Tanan hamoicher atzmoi ves banav loy b'nikachavim. If somebody sells himself and his children to idolaters, ain't poidin. I say, if he did it 3 times, we don't ransom him. Aval poidin es abanim, but we do ransom the children after he dies. Mishum kilkula, that they shouldn't assimilate. Now over here, there's a danger that the person will be killed. There's a danger that he'll be killed. So the Rabbanan said to Rabami, not so fast. Ha Yisrael Mumahu, he's a renegade Jew. We see that he eats animals without shchita, and he eats treifus, he eats animals that are torn apart. Even if they have shchita, they can't be eaten. So he said, yeah, but we don't have to say that he's a heretic. He just has a very big taiva. And if he has a very big taiva and he's a mumala teyav, that's not a reason that we should allow him to die. Amalei, so he says, yeah, but we have witnessed times that he had kosher meat and non-kosher meat, and he forsakes the permitted meat and eats the forbidden meat. So he's doing it lahachas, to spite Hashem. Amalei, so he says, if that's the case, Zil, he told the man, I'm sorry, like kashavik dafrukinech, they're not allowing me to redeem you. You're mum lahachas, or mum lahachas, we don't say. Reish Lakish, now here, Reish Lakish wanted to rid the world of these cannibals. Reish Lakish was phenomenally wealthy, so he was going to ambush them. Listen to what he did. Reish Lakish, Zovin nafshei leludai. Reish Lakish sold himself to these cannibals. Shakal Badei, he took a very interesting disguised weapon. Shakal Badei Chaisa V'Gulgalta. He took a knit bag, and inside he concealed a small, very, very heavy lead ball. Amar, he said, Gemire, we have a tradition, the Yuma Basra, on the last day of the person's life, before they are ready to eat him, they give him a last wish. Kol de boy minayu of delay. Whatever the person wants, whatever the victim wants, they fulfill. Why? Ki de leichel admei, because this way they feel at least he'll forgive them for his blood. Others learn in order that his blood should be sweeter, because if he's in a good mood, when they kill him, his blood will be sweeter. So Yuma Basra, or when they were about to kill Reish Lakish, Amalei, they said to him, what's your last wish? Amalu ba'inu akmentinchu, I want to be able to tie you up, v'osvinchu, and sit you down, v'kol chad minaychu, and every one of you, amche chiyuso palga. You see this light bag? I want to give you a smack and a half. So they said, okay, we'll humor him. Come tinu. They let him tie them up, and sat them down. Kol chad minay, each one kad machye chad chaisa. When he gave them one bang with this heavy lead ball concealed in the bag, nofik nishmase, they like fainted. Charkine l'shine, and when they came to, they were gnashing their teeth. Amalei, so he said, you're laughing at me. I have another half smack to give you. Kalinu Kulu, with his tremendous might, with this weighted ball, he killed all of them. Nafik v'asa, he escaped and he came. Yosef, he sat down, ka'ochel v'shasi, and he was eating and drinking. Now, Reish Lakish didn't save any money. Amr le brate, so his daughter asked him, "Loi bois midei lemizgale, don't you want to save some money to buy a mattress?" Amar, so he said, "Biti kreise kri, my stomach is my mattress." Kinofik nafshe, when he passed away, there was nothing left in his possessions. Shavik kava de marika, and all he left to his Yoshim was a kav of saffron, which is a type of spice. And he regretted that. Kari anavshe, he said about himself, va'ozvu la'cherim chelam, that he left to others his power. In other words, he didn't want to spend time on any extra worldly possessions, so that he could use all of his time for learning Torah. It reminds me of the story of the Chofetz Chaim. Of course, this has to be taken in perspective of the time. It's not true for our time, but at the time of the Chofetz Chaim in Radin, people didn't have curtains hanging from their windows. He visited one of his relatives and he saw curtains, and he lamented, "I see dafim of Gemara hanging from the windows." The idea is the time it took to make all that money for the curtains was a loss of time for learning. Chofetz Chaim also said, we know that there are certain leniencies that we do on Shabbos because of a hefsid meruba, because of a great loss. So everybody asks, does halacha of Shabbos change because of money? And the Chofetz Chaim explains, of course it doesn't change because of money. It changes because of learning. Because if there's a tremendous loss of money, then there's a loss of learning. We want to welcome in, I see Ben Sion Cohn, I see Bruce Eisenberg, and Yeshua Shmuel Eisenberg, a father and son team. It's wonderful to have you. And let's see who else is just Mo Kushner is waving to me. Good to see you, Mo.
Hello, Weiss.
Yes, Gedalia.
That story is fantastic. That story with Reish Lakish.
Yeah.
For a number of reasons. But the Stamazoi, why do you suppose they let him tie them up and then beat them senseless?
It's like Batman.
They did not worry about being overpowered by a man with a what they thought was a shopping bag in his hands. They just weren't worried about that.
Also, the Gemara feels the need to make mention of the fact that when they would grimace, he would say to them, "Are you making fun of me? I still have to hit you with a half a stroke." Does that figure into the story?
It was the opposite of what they wanted from him. They wanted him to die with a good taste in his mouth, and he wanted them to die with a bad taste in their mouth.
Reish Lakish was a thief himself.
Yeah, but not a.
He knew who he was dealing with. He could handle those kind of guys.
Yeah, but not a cannibal.
Well, if anybody could, Reish Lakish was the man.
Right. They met their match. Now,
how many people he killed?
we don't know how many people were in that circle.
He killed first, the rest were going to stop.
In Kazakhstan, they had a sect that they used to...
Oh, stop Kazakhstan.
They used to catch children and kill them and cook them. They were told to watch out.
Put any to it.
It sounds like he killed the entire tribe that was around. If a person sells his field to a guy, so this is in Eretz Yisrael. Now, selling your field to a guy in Eretz Yisrael is not a good thing, because we want land to be in the hands of Yidden. We don't want the hands to be in the land to be in the hands of Goy. So they instituted loikeach umevi mimenu bikurim. They made the buyer buy from him every year the first fruit and bring it mivnei tikkun olam, for the benefit of the world. Because if he's going to have to do that and buy it from him, so then he's not sell it in the beginning, and even if he sells it, he's going to try to buy it back. Now, from the fact that we say that he brings bikurim, that means, it seems to mean that our Mishnah holds that ein kinyan la'akim, a guy does not acquire the land, la'afkia oso midei meiser. It seems to be that the kedusha of Eretz Yisrael remains even after the guy buys it. So now the Gemara is going to talk all about this question. Amar Rabba, even though a guy does not have the power to remove from the land the chiyuv of meiser, shenemar ki li haaretz, for to me Hashem says is the land, li kedushas haaretz, and therefore even if a guy buys land in Eretz Yisrael, it's still chayiv of meiser. But a guy, when he buys the land, does have right to make it unplantable. But he does have the right, if he buys it, even to make it not arable anymore. He could dig pits, trenches, and caves. Although the heavens are to Hashem, v'aretz nasan of ne'adam. That's the position of Rabbah. Rabbi Lazar Aimer, even though when a guy buys land in Eretz Yisrael, it's not chayiv meiser anymore. Shenemar deganecha, only your crop, v'loy degan oivik kecham, not the crop of a guy. Aval ein kinyan oivik kecham Eretz Yisrael, but a guy that buys land in Eretz Yisrael can only plant in it. He cannot destroy it. He doesn't have the right to dig pits, trenches, and caves. To Hashem, the earth and its fullness belongs. Now, so what are they arguing about? Marsaver, one holds, Diganecha, that the only grain that's chayiv meiser is if it's your crop, your pile. But not the pile of a guy. The pile of a guy is, the grain of a guy is not chayiv. So that means that a guy has a kinyan to free the land from chayiv meiser. But the other opinion is, no. What it means is something else. And that is diguncha. When is a crop chayiv and meiser? When the Yisrael does the completion, when he does the meiruach, when he smooths out the pile with the rake. V'lo digun oivei kechav, but not if the gemar malacha is done by a guy. But we don't darshan that the grain of a guy is part of a meiser. Rather, Rashi says, "Digun chavaloi digun shalayv kecham she'im merchan ovid kecham." If the ovid kecham smooths out the pile, the hein shaloi b'shas meiruach shu gemar malachlan lamaiser meiruach ovid kecham paitran va'afilu lo kon mi Yisrael, even if he buys it from a yid. Aval imig dilu bekarka ovid kecham, but if it grows in the ground of a guy. V'lokhan Yisrael, and the Yid buys it b'shibailan in stalks merchan, and the Yid smooths it out. Chayav b'meiser. because the ground is chayiv. The guy doesn't have the power to be mafkiyat midei meiser. The karka any Yehuda biyad Eretz Yisrael biyad oivekacham lo yufka kedushas. I'm a rabbi. So Rabbi is the one that says that a guy cannot free the land from the Kedushas Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi says, you know how I know this? I'm a Rabbi Mina Aminallah Ditanan, for we learned, this is in Peya, Mesechlis Peya, Ditanan, Haleket, the gleanings, that's when the reaper reaps and one or two blades fall from his hands. It has to be left for the poor. Vashikha, the forgotten sheaf, Vapeya, and the corner of the field, shall oivik kechavim, belonging to an idolater, chayovim b'maiser. Now, remember, the matnas aniyim are not chayiv b'maiser. But here it says if it's the leket shikha and peya of a guy, it's chayiv and maiser, ele imkein hifker. Unless the guy renounces it, because hefker is part of a meiser. Now, what's the case? Heichi dami, ilema di Yisrael. If it's talking about where the crops belong to a Jew, and and he left the leket shikopeya in the field, and instead of an Ani Yisrael coming and taking it, and a guy went ahead and collected it, which, by the way, is the halacha, because we know that we don't stop on Yaakam. So then, since it belonged to a yid and it was matnas aniyim, what do you mean? Only if he was mafkarit. Matnas aniyim is hefker. It is part of maises. Elim kein hefker. Ha mifker evikaime. It's left out for the poor. It is hefker. Elalav must be pshat. The oivei kechavim. It's talking about the field of a guy, and the guy left leket shikopeya. V'lektinu Yisrael, and a yid took it. Now, since a guy is not chayiv in leket shikopeya, so if the yid took it, it's chayiv in meiser, unless the guy was mafkarit. Taima de hifker, only if the guy was mafkarit. Holoi hifker, but if the guy wasn't mafkarit, chayiv. So you see that even though it's the guy's land, it's still chayiv in Trumas Amaisis, because a guy doesn't have a koyach to be mafkir the land from Trumas Amaisis. Says, well, no, that's not what the case is. Big Kiddush from the Gemara now. La'olam de Yisrael. It's talking about where a yid left the matnas aniyim. V'lektinu oivei kechav, and the guy collected it. Now, Taisvis explains that the yid had in mind that it should be matnas aniyim for a yid, and therefore when the guy takes it, it's hefker b'tois, and hefker b'tois is not hefker. The ka'amid ha-mifkarei v'kaimei, and now what you said, but he left it as matnas aniyim, which is already hefker, it's part of Trumas Amaisus. Nehei de mifkarei adaiti de Yisrael, even though he was mafkarit for a yid, adaiti d'ovid kechav mi mifkarei, was he mafkarit for a guy? Therefore, if a guy takes it, it's not hefker, and since it belongs to a yid, it's chayiv and Trumas Amaisus. So that's not a proof. Let's look at another proof. Tajma. Yisrael shelokach sada me'oivei kechavim. A Jew who bought a field from a guy, ad shelo yevia shlish, before it grew a third. V'chazer u'machar loy mishevia shlish, and then he sold it back to the guy after it grew a third. So at the time when it grew a third, it was in the rishus of the yid. So it's chayiv and Trumas Amaisus. Chayeves b'maisus shekvar nischayiva. It was already chayiv before he sold it back to the guy. Now the implication is nischayiva in it's only because it belonged to the Yid before it grew a third, and it grew a third in his property. But the fact that it came from the guy, that would not be a reason to be chayiv in Trumas Amaisis. So that's a raya. Rabbah says that, that is a raya that there is a kinyan in of a guy to release the land from its chiyuv of Ma'aser. Says, well, you're right, but we're not talking about Eretz Yisrael proper. The area which was annexed by David HaMelech, which is called Kibush Yachid, an area of Kibush Yachid, and Kibush Yachid lo yishmei Kibush, it's not considered a conquest, and therefore, since it's not Eretz Yisrael proper, there we say that a guy has the power to release it from Chiyuv of Ma'aser. Because of a Kibush Yachid lo yishmei Kibush. Tajma. Yisrael va'evi kechavim shelakhu sada b'shukfas. Here, Bruce and Tony bought a field in partnership. Right? Bruce and Tony bought a field in Eretz Yisrael partnership. So, Rebbe says every part of that crop, tevel v'chulin muravim zebezeh. It has the din of chulin and untied produce mixed up, because since Tony and Bruce own a share in every crop, so each one has a mixture of tevel and chulin mixed in it. Reb Shimon Gamliel Omer, shel oivik kechavim, that which the guy harvests is potter. V'shel Yisrael chayim, and that which Bruce harvests is chayim. Now, ad kan loy pligi ela demar saber yesh breira. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel holds of retroactive clarification, and we say that whatever Tony took is clarified as his, and therefore it's potter, and whatever Bruce took is his, and it's chayiv. While Rebbe holds we don't say retroactive clarification, and therefore in every grain they share a percentage of each grain. So each grain has tevel and chula mixed in. But everybody agrees that Tony's grain is potter. To free it from a chiyuv of Ma'aser. Says Gemara, you're right, but Hachanami b'Surya. Here we're talking about in Surya, which is an annexed territory, which is more lenient, and there we say that the guy has the power to free it from Kedushas Eretz Yisrael. Because of a Kibush Yachid lo yishmei Kibush, the annexing of an individual of David is not considered an annexation, and it doesn't have the power of regular Eretz Yisrael. Rav Chia bar Avin, Tajma, HaMoicher Sadehu la'oivik kechavim la'ah. So now we're going to, this is how it gets into our Gemara. We're going to bring a raya from our Mishnah. HaMoicher Sadehu la'oivik kechavim. If you sell your field to an idolater, like Keach, you have to buy from him umevi bikurim and bring the first fruits mipnei tikkun ha'olam. So you see, you only bring it mipnei tikkun ha'olam in, only because we don't want you to sell property. We don't want you to sell real estate of Eretz Yisrael to a guy, so we make you bring bikurim. That implies, but midoraisa loy. The land itself is really not chayiv in first fruit because it's sold to a guy. Amar Rav Ashi, so Rashi said, look, shtei takonas hava. They instituted two takonas. Meikara havamaisa midoraisa. Initially they told people, look, the land that's owned by a guy, it still has Kedushas Eretz Yisrael, and biblically you have to bring the first fruits. But Kevan de Chazu de Kamikre Umizneve, then people said, so then what's so bad about selling it to a guy? It retains its Kedusha anyway. So they saw the Kamikre Umizneve, they saw that people were selling to make money. The Savrei B'Kedusha says, Ayukaim, and they said, nothing's lost, because even when it's in the hands of the guy, it's still holy. So Tikinulu, the Loylais, they instituted, don't bring Bikurim. So people should feel that they're doing a terrible thing. They're removing the Kedushas Haaretz. But Kavan de Chazu, when they saw the Mandalay Sagale, somebody that didn't have enough money sold the land anyway. Mizvin, they sold the land anyway, and then the Kabishtaken Biyad Oivdik Kechavim, land of Eretz Yisrael was lost to Goyim, and there were large amounts of land being lost to the Arabs, to the Turks. Harder to Kinalu, so then they enacted the Leisu that they should have to buy it, and when they saw that they had to buy it every year, so then they would try to buy it back, or they would try not to sell it. Now the Gemara clears another shayla. What happens if somebody sells his field to a guy for usufruct? In other words, he doesn't sell the ownership of the field to the guy. He only sells the field for the guy to use its fruit. So Rabbi Yochanan Amar Mevi v'Kairei. Excuse me. In this case, he's not selling it to a guy. In this case, he's selling it to a yid. What happens is Aaron sells his field to Irving for 10 years. And then after 10 years, Irving will return the field to Aaron. Now, the text of the Bikurim is that you say, you thank Hashem for, in the formula of Bikurim, you say that I'm bringing the first fruit from the Adama Asher Nasatali, from the land that you gave me. Can Irving say that formula? It's not his land. It's Aaron's land. Unless you say Kinyan HaPeiris Ki Kinyan HaGuf, that the right of using it is like a ownership of the guf, and then Irving would be able to say Esa Adama Asher Nasatali. So it's a machlokes. Itma Hamoiches Sadeh LePeiris, Aaron sells his field to Irving. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Mevi v'Kairei, Irving could bring the Bikurim and say the formula. Reish Lakish Amar Mevi v'Eina Kairei, he could bring it, but he can't say the formula. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Mevi v'Kairei, because Kinyan Peres ki Kinyan HaGuf Dami. The fact that he has the right of the usufruct gives him a type of ownership on the land, and he could say Reish Lakish Amar Mevi v'Eina Kairei, because Kinyan Peres love ki Kinyan Guf Dami. So Eisrei Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish, Rabbi Yochanan wants to prove that Kinyan Peres is ki Kinyan Guf. It says, V'samachta b'chol ha'toiv, asher nosan l'cha Hashem alikecha uleveisecha. You should rejoice with all the good that Hashem gave you and to your house. Ata v'alevi v'ager asher b'sharecha. Now we know the house refers to a wife, right? It says Esther was ulekacha Mordechai loy levas. Al tikar levas el lebayis. Bayis is a house, is a wife. So Rabbi Yochanan says we learn out uleveisecha malamed she'adam mevi bikurei ishtay v'kairei, that a person could bring the first fruit of his wife and say the formula. Now, from his wife's nichsei maluk, he doesn't own his wife's property. He only has the right of usufruct while he's married to her. And yet you see that he could say bikurim, the formula. So you see that Kinyan Peres is Kinyan HaGuf Dami. Amalei Reish Lakish count is Shani Asim. It's different over there. Dichsiva leveisecha. Oh, really? Kinyan Peres would not be Kinyan Guf. But the fact that it says uveisecha, which adds a wife, teaches us that you could say bikurim, the formula, even on the bikurim of your wife. The Igadam, right? Others say that Reish Lakish turns the tables on Rabbi Yochanan, You could say for your wife, his wife's property that she brought in the dowry, the nichsei malug, which he has rights of usufruct, he could say the formula and says only over there because it says and for your house. Just the fact that you have the right of the usufruct, boy. Amalei, Sir Rabbi Yochanan tells him, this is where I learned my argument from. The fact that you could say the formula bikurim on the property of your wife, even though you only have a kinyan peiros, you only have the right of usufruct, that's proof positive that kinyan peiros is kikinyan aguf dami. Eisvei, hayabah b'derech. If a man was traveling, ubikurei ishtoi biyadai, and he had the first fruit of his wife in his hand, and Rachmana litzlan lo yaleinu v'shama shemeisa ishtoi, and he hears that his wife died, mevi v'kairei. Now that sounds like it implies, like Reish Lakish, that normally, if it would be his wife's fruit, he wouldn't be able to say the formula, because he only has a kinyan peiros. But now that she died and he inherits her, now he has a kinyan aguf, now he can do it. Meisa in, loy meisa loy. Says, no. First of all, it says ulabeisai. So of course he could say the formula. And hu adin da'afa gav de loy meisa, even if she didn't die. Umeisa itzrichale. Because we're going to see that there's an interesting rule by Bikurim. Even though normally shluchai shel adam kemaisai, if you harvest your Bikurim and give it to your friend to bring it, he doesn't say the formula. Because the pasuk says, v'lakachta ve'ivesa. You take it and you bring it. The one that takes it has to bring it. So, Sokadai Tachamina, Umeisa Tzrichalei. The Chiddush is where she dies and there's like a change of ownership. Sokadai Tachamina, Ligza Mishum de Rabbi Yosef Reb Chanina. We should say that you shouldn't be able to say the formula because it's similar to the case of Rabbi Yosef Reb Chanina. Dam Rabbi Yosef Reb Chanina, Batzran, if let's say Baruch harvested his grapes, v'shigron b'yad shliach, and he sent it with Gedalia, well not Gedalia, he sent it with Chatzkel, umei shliach b'derech, and Chatzkel dies. So then Baruch comes and says, okay, I have to do it myself. And Baruch brings it himself, Mevi ve'ena kaireh. Why? Because there was an interruption in the middle. He took it, then Chatzkel started to bring it, and then he finished bringing it. He can't say the formula. Because Mevi ve'ena kaireh, shenema v'lakachta ve'vesa, you have to take it, in other words, harvest it, and bring it. Here, since Chatzkel was in the middle, before he died, so you can't say the formula. So here I might think here also, we should decree that since initially when he took it, it was his wife's, and then Loyalenu, his wife died, and now it's fully his, it might be like it's akin to two different people. Shema mina kamash malan, that we do not say that. Still not the easiest of Gemaras, Rabbi say. Baruch Hashem, without a hitch, we moved 150 miles north and still were able to do the Daf, Baruch Hashem. We're going to learn the Mishnah Yomis now.